I'm Sam Ward, and today we're going to be putting up a single garage with a workshop on the side by Quick Gardens. They offer everything from classical designs to contemporary. From a small shed right up to a granny annex with multiple rooms and everything else in between. They even offer a sauna. Although a competent DIY can take this project on, if you're at all worried, Quick Garden offer a fitting service, so you've got the option. When you receive your garden building, it all comes neatly packaged up, and the best thing to do is sort it into piles, go through step by step. Each component is numbered and labelled. It's a really intuitive system. So you need a really good solid foundation that's square and level. Then we can put these ground beams in, so these are pressure treated, and then you can start building up off of that. Right, at the moment they're just screwing the first row down onto the base rail, but that's the only screws you put in on this, unless there's one that's really twisted and you need to manipulate it, and then you can just tack it in. But that's all you need, the only fixings that are required. So you just saw the lads drilling into the concrete this base rail, and then these are secured to that. You know, wind can't get underneath it and take it off. Now the lads have got the first row round. You can really see the footprint, so you can see the openings, the doorways, the windows really start taking shape, start flying up now. So on the front elevation, we use a string line just to pull all that, because there's 3 individual components. There's no telling what line they're following, so they just use a string line to pull through to get everything exactly in line. When you're tapping these down, you must never knock these end bits. Always come in. Obviously these could snap off down that grain, so you just always step inside, give them a tap there. That's quite important. So we're an hour and a half in. They've got a few more logs to get on the top, up to plate level. So once that first rail is in, it absolutely flies in. I'm staggered by the progress. So what you just saw the lads doing there was marking the roof joists, so it goes edge to edge. So they've got to cut 100 mil off of each of these, and that will give you the actual roof dimensions. So now they're just using the one that they've just cut as a template, so they can mark all of the rest. This battens just been screwed on there, so they've calculated the fall from front to back, so all the water can drain towards the back into the guttering. So what Gabrielle's just doing now is securing this 100 by 34 mil timber around the perimeter of the bottom. So that enables the insulation to sit down on top of it. And then all that's touching the floor is the pressure treated timber. What Chris is doing is just trimming along that line he's marked, and that's the angle of the roof. Obviously the central wall protrudes up, and then they mark a line, so it's exactly the pitch of the roof. The next stage is to secure these vertical 100 by 38s. So unlike most timber structures, what we're achieving here is essentially a cavity. So we'll have the PIR in here and then the small air gap, and then the cladding will sit on the front once it's counter-battened. So it's really good for the thermal value of this building. So Chris is up there on the roof with his air nailer and he's absolutely flying through the tongue groove boards, and there's a lovely little detail around the edge which is a parapet, and I think there's a bit of metal trim that goes on, and then some self-adhesive felt that is applied to make it watertight. Chris is just putting together the optional extra roller door, which is electric. So he's just laying it out now and he's getting it all assembled. The kit comes as standard with a wooden pedestrian door, but our client has opted for this UPVC door. It adds a little bit more money to the cost, but I think it's well worth it. I've just cut these two bits of PIR in. They're pretty snug. Now we're going to put some flexible sealant all the way around the parameter. If there's any bigger gaps, we're going to pump it full of expanding foam. It's important to get it right to the back. Then we're going to silver tape all the joints all the way around the edges, and then it's ready to go. Insulation's in, silver tape's on, then the batten, then it's the membrane, and then the covering. This gives us a 30mm gap.
Now there may be people watching this video who think there's no point in insulating a garage unless you're going to heat it, but people use garages for all kinds of things, and it's always a good idea to future-proof your buildings so that you can use them for other purposes. Now in this case we've insulated the walls so that the workshop can be used with a bit of heating when it's needed. When it comes to the roof, you can insulate it as a warm roof or a cold roof. If you want to know the pros and cons of each method, we've got a video on this subject and we're going to have a link to that at the end of this video. In the case of a warm roof, the insulation would be laid directly on the torch-on membrane, which would then act as a vapor barrier, and a decking of OSB or plywood could then be laid on top of the insulation to bring it level with the parapet. You then have the choice of finishing it yourself with GRP, torch-on felt, or a rubber roof membrane. If you decide to treat it as a cold roof and insulate from the inside, this is done by placing insulation between the joists and maybe also the underside, but you will need a 25mm air gap and a vapor barrier on the warm side of the insulation before you fix the ceiling. Quick Garden have produced a detailed drawing showing the build-up for the wall insulation and the roof insulation for a cold roof. We've added a link to this drawing in the description area.
So all the rainwater tips towards the back, and there's a optional extra of a steel gutter in, and then that's going to drain into a water butt.